All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here on the last of our budget trainings for now. This particular training is going to focus on the difference between direct and indirect costs and certain unallowable expenses for our budgets. This particular training probably won't take the full hour, but we want to walk folks through what these costs are and kind of how to budget everything. I also wanted to note that I will be following up after this training with the recordings from the last two trainings that folks may not have received just yet. We've had a lot of trainings the last couple of days, so I figured it was best to just wait to send one email with the last couple of trainings and all of the documents that are important to share here. So we can go to the next slide. So again, I think most of you know who Caesar and I are at this point. I did want to note two things. One, we have an office hours set up that begins at 3 o'clock today, right after this call. So if you have any questions that we don't answer today, or you want to regroup and come back with some other questions, we have time from 3 Eastern to 5:30 Eastern today to answer any questions folks might have. Additionally, I wanted to note that today is my last day working. I'm going on vacation. So while I'm out, definitely if there's any concerns over budgets, you can coordinate with the whole urban forestry team, but definitely make sure you keep Caesar's email here handy while I'm out. I will be back on July 8th to help pick up wherever everybody is. But I wanted to note that, so you take note of Caesar's email to make sure that you have it. Next slide. And then also, I don't know if they were able to hop on this call today with us, but when it comes to budgets and reimbursements and accounting, we also have Amy and Daniel who are helping with all of these costs. Amy is our chief financial officer, and Daniel is our senior accountant. And they're making sure that all of the budgets look good and that we're doing reimbursements the way that makes sense. Next slide. All right, so keeping with the icebreakers that are about the cities, which we've been doing a lot of, some cities have sister cities. I don't know if everybody here does, but do you have a sister city? What do you share with them? Do you have events, exchange of gifts, recognition? If not, if you don't have one, I encourage everyone to just share another fun fact maybe about your city that other people might not know. So we encourage folks to drop this in the chat, or if you want to come off mute and share, you can do that as well. All right, we have a quiet group today. I'll give people maybe 30 more seconds if you have an answer to this, and if not, it's okay. Okay, and that's cool. Las Vegas is often referred to as the ninth island with the largest population of Hawaiians outside of the islands. I actually had to look this up too. I didn't know if where I live we have a sister city. I don't know if I trust this because this is from Wikipedia, but according to Wikipedia, Annapolis has 7 sister cities, and I am pretty involved with some of the people here, and I've never heard of this. So I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Oh no, you're about to cut down a 300-year-old beloved oak tree. So we're probably going to be run out of town by an angry mob. That's what's on my mind today. Well, I hope that you're not run out of town. I know losing trees is hard.
Thanks. It's just we're just thinking about that. It's time though. It's hazardous. Um, but yeah.
Well, thank you all for sharing a couple of other fun facts about your city. We can keep moving. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time talking about direct costs and what they mean. We have a couple of examples of indirect costs, and then just a reminder of some of our unallowable costs. And we'll have time for questions at the end today. So again, this training is uh, hopefully fairly straightforward. Next slide. So what does it mean for direct costs? It's pretty straightforward. Again, direct costs are costs that basically have a particular final cost objective, or they're easily assigned to activities that are going to be happening throughout the life cycle of the grant. And so we're going to go into a bunch of examples of this, but even in our spreadsheet, the way that we have our budget set up, it becomes fairly straightforward to determine what's a direct cost. And you'll see this kind of as we go through this slide today. Next slide. So examples of direct costs are things like staff or employee compensation, the fringe benefits that go along with those employees and their compensation, things like maintenance of membership roles, subscriptions, publications, all of those things that have a particular number that can be assigned to it for the work that's happening are all going to be considered direct costs. Next slide. Promotion and other forms of public relations are considered direct costs. So if you're educating folks about different issues, a lot of those types of expenses are considered direct costs. Conferences, generally speaking, are all considered direct costs, and the costs that go along with attending those conferences. And then maintenance, protection, and investment of any funds that are not being used by a federal entity are also considered direct costs as well. Oh, all right, next slide. Administration of group benefits on behalf of members or clients are considered direct benefits. Advertising is allowable for certain particular things, and this would be a direct cost. So recruitment, procurement of goods and services, disposal of scrap or surplus materials for an award, and program outreach are all considered direct costs. Next slide. Will there be any mandatory conferences for us to attend? At this point in time, there are not any mandatory conferences for folks to attend. If that comes up for one reason or another, we will let folks know. I do believe we can share out a list of upcoming events that people might be interested in. I know even for our team, the U.S. Forest Service has shared a couple of those things, and we're able to potentially share some of those, but there's nothing that we're requiring folks to attend just yet. Next slide. Public relations are allowable for specific items here. That's also a direct cost. And so that could include really any cost here that is specifically required by the federal award that could be communicating with the public and the press, or general liaisons with news, media, and government relations. Those are all direct costs. Next slide. So travel costs as well are able to be included here. Next slide. Insurance is again a direct cost, but there's a couple of pieces here that are important to uplift here. So if you have insurance that needs to be met here, allowable types, the extent, the cost of insurance should adhere to the non-federal entities policy and reflect sound business practices. And then again, cost of the insurance for trustees, officers, and other employees are allowable, but only to the extent that the insurance represents additional compensation. Any cost of insurance identified as a beneficiary is unallowable. Next slide. Couple more things on the insurance here. Cost of insurance or contributions to any reserve covering the risk of loss or damage to federal government property are unallowable. Insurance against defects, cost of insurance with respect to any costs incurred to correct any deficits in the non-federal entities, materials, or workmanship is unallowable. And then insurance costs for business interruption or similar coverage is allowable, but it cannot include management fees. And these are all examples of direct costs still. Next slide. Indirect costs are a little bit different. And so indirect costs are typically costs that are not specifically identifiable for the program or project, but they are still necessary to complete the overall operation of an entity. So examples here could be general administration and general expenses. So again, anything that goes along with this, the cost of operating and maintaining facilities. So rent, for example, is an indirect cost. And then the loss of or the depreciation of buildings and equipment. I do want to note here that this is the general federal guidance, and typically we're not seeing infrastructure under these particular awards, and the cost of equipment is not allowable. Next slide. Also for audit services, so for managing federal money, we know that there are some pieces here that might cost to have the audit conducted every year. And so that's something that can be rolled up in the indirect costs for particular projects here. Next slide. And then to talk about the unallowable costs for federal grants, we've listed the CFRs here, which kind of go through all of these pieces. And so I encourage folks to spend time looking at that. But lobbying is unallowable. Alcoholic beverages is unallowable. Advertising costs outside of what we shared previously are unallowable. Any goods or services for personal use are unallowable under federal grants. Any bad debts that are in place, any fines or penalties that were incurred by the entity are unallowable. And then most specific entertainment costs are also not allowable. Next slide. Fundraising here is also unallowable. And this is particularly for direct fundraising in particular. Investment management fees are unallowable, and then any interest that you're collecting is unallowable costs. Next slide. There are links here specifically talking about frequently asked questions by the Forest Service. So if folks have questions on some of these costs, there is a website linked here that go through some other frequently asked questions. I also want to note that the team here is working on a document for frequently asked questions as well. And we might have some additional cost guidance that you can look into there. Next slide. All right, so that's it for this particular training. This one was pretty short, but those, again, are basically the direct costs, what's allowable and what's unallowable. And so we have plenty of time here for folks if you have questions about costs, you have questions on your budget, or you just need to follow up about any other questions you might have.
we just finished our training. We can take you back to the line. Our training today covered these topics: direct, indirect, and allowable costs. Um, if there's any questions related to that on your budgets, feel free. We'll share this after the call as well.
Right, if nobody else has questions, we'll give folks time back into their day. Just as another reminder, we will have office hours starting at 3 p.m. today. So should you have other questions or other things to discuss, feel free to hang on for that particular piece here.
Joe, do you mind if I hijack your meeting just to go over census tracts and block groups with folks who are on this call?
Go ahead. I'll have Caesar, if you can stop sharing your screen, that would be great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that you should be receiving an email from me because the USDA has asked us to require our subawardees to drill down to the census block group level if they have communities that are not identified as CGES communities. So, for instance, if you identified communities using EJ Screen or EPA IRA tool, that needs to be drilled down to the block group level. It's not just the census tract level, but all the way down to the block group level. You're going to get a spreadsheet from me. Skokie, thank you, Kathy and Liz, has been very kind to share what they put together, how they listed the CGES tracts and then how they drill down to the block groups and the justifications for why they need to work in that block group, environmental burdens, socioeconomic factors, etc. I'm going to send that out this afternoon. And then what I'd like for you to do, it's likely going to be confusing. So give me a call. We're going to do a one-on-one screen share. I'm going to walk you through the mapping process and how to identify these block groups in EJ Screen and in EPA, in the EPA IRA tool. And we'll get that put together for you. We'll work with you to prepare that. And then we will attach it to your scope of work and budget and submit it to the USDA for review. So please know that that's coming. And then just reach out to me. This whole week, I will set aside time to go over this mapping with each of you. And I'll answer any questions you may have. But I know that this was just thrown at us from the USDA, so bear with us. Any questions?
Hey, Richna, so do we need to include this in the scope of work that's being signed internally before we send it off to you?
You don't have to have it signed internally yet. You can send it off to us to review before it's signed internally, but
Oh,
I would recommend it. And Emily, I'll reach out to you. I'll schedule a time with you tomorrow morning and I can go
okay,
over this with you tomorrow and I'll do the mapping with you. We'll do it together.
okay, all right, sounds
Okay.
great, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else? Sam, Tessa, I'll go over it with you this afternoon. And Richard, I think he's still trying to connect to audio, but I'll go over it with him today as well. Belinda, I'll be going over it soon. Brad, I'd love for you to be able to just connect with me so that we can go over it together. Okay. All right. We're going to give you your time back. Brad, let's get on a call and let's schedule a time and I'll walk you through that with the mapping.
What time would you like to call, Rashna?
You want to do it right now?
I'll call you in just a minute. Or we
Okay,
could stay
excellent.
on.
We could definitely stay on. We could, but give me about 5 minutes to pull up all of your information for Hanford, and then I'll walk you through it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right. Bye. Thanks, everyone.